Welcome to the Second Line Show. I'm Nola Nash. Let's let the good times roll. Yeah, I told y'all we're like a real show. Welcome to the Second Line Show once again. I am Nola Nash. Thank you so much for joining us. We have got a tremendous show for you guys tonight. I'm so excited to be welcoming these ladies to the show. I've been looking forward to this for some time now. I do want to remind you guys that you can be posting those comments wherever you're watching the show right now, whether you're watching it on my Facebook page, on the Right Review, on Nola's Second Line, or on YouTube Live on Nola Nash Entertainment. Go ahead and drop those comments there. We will try to get to some of those. We don't always get to all of them. So if we don't get to you, please know that we tend to go back and take a look at those comments and answer what we can. So please leave them there. We'll get to you if we can. And if you happen to be joining us after the live event, if you weren't able to make it for the live show, you're in for a treat. So keep leaving those comments. They do give me a notification and I will go back and check on you. All right. So I am super excited to be welcoming these ladies. We go Brady Bunch style. So I always start here and kind of just go around, you know. So I'm going to toss it off to Miss Sheila Williams. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you write, what you like to do. And ladies, if you guys would not mind giving us a must-read book for Black History Month. If you think of one now, that's fine. If we need to add to that list later, we'll keep adding to that list. Everybody's got their to-be-read pile that we can add to the whole show long. So, Sheila, start us off.
Okay, I'm Sheila Williams. I am the author of 5 published books. My first book was called Dancing on the Edge of the Roof, and it came out in 2002. It was made into a film by Netflix starring Alfre Woodard called Juanita. And my latest book is called The Secret Women. I have been writing ever since I could hold a crayon. And I love to read. I love to write. I love to eat popcorn with salt and butter on it.
Yes, ma'am.
I also love to travel, but I haven't been doing that very much lately. So my hobbies these days are getting my house a little more organized, clearing out closets. Isn't that fun? And eventually I'll get to clear out the basement. I have 2 recommendations. My to-be-read stack is too long, too tall. Toni Morrison's Playing in the Dark, which is an amazing commentary. And also the poetry of our current poet laureate, who is Jo Harjo, American Sunrise. She is a woman of the Muskogee Nation, and her poetry is just sublime. So I can recommend those 2.
Excellent choices. Excellent choices. All right, Tamara, it's on you now.
Hello, I am Tamara Winfrey Harris. I am a writer who specializes in race and gender and the ways they intersect with politics and pop culture and current events. My writing has appeared in the New York Times and the Atlantic and LA Times and Cosmopolitan. My first book, which is The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, came out in 2015. And I am so excited that my second book, which is Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping Into Your Power, will be out on March 9th. And it's more than 30 feminist, anti-racist, body positive, LGBTQ positive, anti-respectability politics, and pro-Black letters from Black women to Black girls. I am also like I can't believe I'm on the same show with the person who is responsible for Juanita, which is amazing. I loved that. So I'm fangirling a little bit now.
Aww.
I would say the books that I recommend, first of all, Isabel Wilkerson. So if you haven't read Cast, but you got to read The Warmth of Other Suns. So I can't choose one. So read both. And since Sheila started with the poetry, I would say get you the collected works of Lucille Clifton and enjoy.
Wow. Great recommendations. I'm so glad that was our question. You guys are putting some great things out there. All right, Sadeqa, it's your turn.
Hi, everybody. I am Sadeqa Johnson. I am the author of 4 novels. My first novel is Love in a Carry-On Bag, and that came out in 2012. My second novel came out in 2015, that's Second House from the Corner. Third novel, and then there was me, 2017. You see a little bit of a pattern. It takes me a few years to write a book. And my most recent novel, which is my first time writing historical fiction, it's called Yellow Wife, and that book just came out 2 weeks ago, January 12th. I have been a lover of reading since I can remember. I would say that's like my earliest memory is like going to the library and checking out books. Some of the books that I would recommend for Black history, I really want to reread the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read that when I was like in 8th grade. So I feel like I need to go back and read that. And just today I was doing some research on poetry, Black poets, and I stumbled across Gwendolyn Brooks. I did not realize that she was the first Black or just the first writer to win the Pulitzer Prize. So I plan to dig into some Gwendolyn Brooks books when I get a chance.
I did not realize that either. Good information. Awesome. Let's see. Do we go down to Piper or Nancy? Let's go in a big circle. Nancy, I'm going to throw it to you. We got some good comments coming in here. We're going to check in with those after we do introduction. So y'all keep leaving them. We're going to get to you. Hang on. All right, Nancy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Johnson, and I'm the author of the debut novel, The Kindest Lie. I actually became a published author yesterday. So
wow.
All new
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm so excited. Yeah, it's just been overwhelming. Again, my book is The Kindest Lie. It's a story of family, sacrifice, love, all of it at the intersection of race and class at the dawn of the Obama era. So you'll have to check it out. It's available everywhere books are sold. And my book has just been getting a lot of recognition, and I'm just blown away by all of it. Today it was reviewed in the Washington Post. It's been on most anticipated lists for the Oprah magazine. I had to make a list. NBC News, Shondaland, Good Housekeeping, wow. Refinery 29, a lot more. And so I'm just overwhelmed by the experience and stressed out too by all of the things that I have to do as a published author to promote the book and everything, and soon think about the next one. But for a book that I would recommend, it's more of a quiet novel that I don't know if a lot of people have read. I hadn't read it yet, and I was in a workshop at Tin House, and Tiare Jones recommended it, and it's October Sweet by Maxine Clare. And so it set in 1950s Kansas, and it's just a beautiful novel about a young school teacher. She's at this boarding house for Negro teachers, and loses her job and has to go back to her hometown and just kind of reckon with a lot of things. And so it's about modern jazz. It's got segregation, sibling rivalry, secrets, just a lot of really interesting themes. And I think you'll really enjoy it.
That sounds wonderful. And congratulations. And Sadeqa, congratulations to you too. Yeah. I know I feel like yours launched earlier, Sadeqa, because I've seen it everywhere. You've been getting some tremendous recognition for your work as well. Congratulations to you too, Nancy. I had no idea that it was just now. Again, I keep seeing it everywhere. So
yeah,
whoever y'all got on your team, y'all keep them because they're doing a good job.
Yeah, we've got good publicists,
I really had
right?
no idea. Yes, you do. I had no idea that they were this brand new. So congratulations to both of you. And Nancy, what a ride to be on as a debut author. That's incredible.
So I feel wonderful to be with all of these accomplished authors. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've heard so many great authors say is they were all a debut author once. And so I think we all remember that feeling. Mine was not that long ago. And it's just a fun ride. And I love, one of my favorite things is authors supporting authors. And you got a great group here. So make yourself at home, my dear. You are well at home.
Thank you.
All right, Sharina, your turn.
Hey, yes. Hi, thanks so much for having me. So a little bit about myself. I've been published since 2016. Started off in contemporary romance, and I shifted a bit to, contemporary fiction. And my books are There we go. Just above here. I'm just so awkward.
It's always backward.
Those two books released in height of COVID 2020, April and October of 2020. And they're both key themes. Basically, it's about sisterhood, really about self-care, just unpeeling the layers of mother, wife, all the titles society gives us, and just really focusing on ourselves and our dreams. So I would say Imperfectly Happy, or I'm Perfectly Happy, depends on how you look at it, centers 4 friends from college. And they formed a mastermind group, accountability group. And 12 years later, of course, life happens and there aren't any closer to their dreams. So they're resolved to go after those dreams. And Judge's Girl is a bit more about mixed family, racial tension, set in the Deep South. Basically, the patriarch of the family dies, and he's married to a white woman, 15 years. And he leaves the house to his adult daughter, who's Black, but with the stipulation that he is able to stay, and they don't get along. So a lot of fun there. So I just love just exploring relationships between women, of course, and on Black women in particular. As far as the book I recommend, I'm not sure if you're getting kicked. I can feel it. I'm hearing it a little bit.
It's a little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
One is a nonfiction called Farming Black.
Oh, yes.
By Leah Penniman. And I picked it up originally for research for the next project that I'm working on. But I fell in love with it. Just connecting more to the land, which I didn't before. And the second one is a young adult fantasy by J.L. Evans. I think we have such a renaissance going on right now with young adult fantasy with Black writers in particular, Black women. Just really enjoying it.
Great recommendations. So glad you can join us. Thank you very much. I was reading some of the synopsis for y'all's books, and I'm telling you what, I'm going to throw in my book recommendation. Whatever these ladies have written, go add that to your list. Wow, seriously, the more I was looking at them, I'm going, I want to read all of these. Where is the time to get from? They're so good. And speaking of somebody who has quite a catalog to choose from, it's Piper Huguley.
I just have to fangirl for a moment because I'm a writer, but I'm also a reader. I'm also a professor of United States literature. So I have taught works by some of these women, and I just feel incredibly blessed to be here with you today. Yeah, it's awesome. My students be like, "Oh no, Dr. Huguley, you don't with them." I was like, "Yes, can you believe it?" Because they're not wowed by anything that I do. So
I love it.
Yeah, that's how students are. So I do that as my day job, but I also write historical romance, and I've written 2 series. My one series is based on a fictitious historically Black college and university called Home to Milford College, set in early Reconstruction period. And another series of mine, Migrations of the Heart, is based in Georgia, and it's about 5 sisters who've migrated from the South to the North, and they find love along the way. And that starts in 1915, and you see the sisters and their families over the years as they find love and expand their families and such. And so that's my stake in the ground in terms of historical romance. This year in 2021, I'm kind of making a segue in terms of my writing. My first contemporary romance will be out in July with Hallmark Publishing, called Sweet Tea. And next year, my first historical fiction will be out about Anne Lowe, the Black woman who designed Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress. Tomorrow. So
very exciting. Very exciting. Okay, and what book would you recommend we add?
to historical fiction books. It's such an area of mine that I also teach and study and write about. Not too many Black women, even prior to Sadeqa, have been writing historical fiction for a lot of reasons a lot of them have nothing to do with us personally, but the circumstances as they exist. So 2 books that have inspired me in terms of writing that particular genre: Douglas's Women by Jewel Parker Rhodes, which is her historical fiction. It was probably like more than 20 years ago now, but I think set a particular kind of subgenre of historical fiction that I like to call the wife books, the wives of great men and what it's like behind the scenes. So yeah, Douglas's Women, if you notice the plural there's a reason for that. And The Black Rose by Tananarive Due about Madam C.J. Walker as historical fiction. Some people may not know about Self-Made. It was on Netflix a couple months ago. It was based on the biography, but I always like to give a shout out to the historical fiction book, The Black Rose.
Excellent choices. And I got to tell you, I relate to the whole students don't care about what you do stuff. They don't care that I've published books. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. What's our homework? They don't care.
Just to add to that, children don't care, right? Like, I don't know if anybody has
true too.
My children are not impressed by me.
No.
Not a little bit. Like, their friends are a little bit more like, oh my gosh, your mom wrote a book. They are not at all.
My children were a bit more concerned with the fact that I had written a book and something with my name on it was going out there. And if it sucked, that meant that their names were also tied to it. So it's like, they're awaiting the launch of the book with as much anticipation, only to know like how much distance do they need to put between them and mom, Teenagers.
Sharina has all of this to look forward to when Justice gets to be a certain age. He'll be with you.
He's all cuddly now, so I'll
enjoy that. They turn into stinky teenagers. You don't want to cuddle them as much. They don't want to cuddle you either, so it's okay.
True.
Now, Piper, when do we get the cover reveal on Sweet Tea? Because I was looking at that, and that covers my head.
That's a good question. I've had it for a bit. So I know what it looks like. I'm not going to anybody else.
That's all that matters, right? All that matters.
No, I mean, first I was just like, I'll just drop it whenever. It doesn't make any difference to me or whatever. But then I said something about it. They were like, oh, no, we want to make sure it's going to be a certain thing. So I need to check in on that.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, that's Sweet Tea. And I was like, oh, that's not the cover.
And now a lot of people thought the little wrapped up package, but that's the thing Hallmark does, I guess. And I was like, no, that's just the thing Hallmark does. And they just have a little wrapped up looking book.
They're going to like through the wrapper, maybe slowly unwrap it. Still, it's like, what does it look like? Well,
yeah, I would have behind me too. I'd be like, oh, Sweet Tea stuff. No.
You got to keep us posted so that we know when it is. Let's check in on some of the comments before we kind of get into our discussion here. Of course, Annie is here from the Right Review. We've got great friends. Yes, Annie is watching. She's laughing about the cover. I'm going to click through some of these. We got some great people, great supporters here. Miss Patricia Sands is always a huge supporter of the show. We appreciate her tremendously. And when she comes for the live one, she always comes back and watches the recorded version. So thank you so much for coming back, Patricia, and posting and letting us know. Let's see from Arlington, Texas. Oh yes, can't wait for the second book. All excited. See, y'all got people totally excited already. User, I don't know who you are, but thank you for your congratulations to Nancy.
Yes, thank you.
Facebook has not had your permission to use your profile. We might need your name and kind of drop it. Let's see what else. Oh, and yes, just like my feed here, these two books have been popping all over the place. So congratulations to your team, everybody else. They're doing right by y'all. Let me say that. I mean, definitely. Claire Fullerton, an amazing author and friend of mine, is tuning in from Malibu, California. And of course, Annie's laughing. We love it when Annie laughs. Annie's got the best laugh, even if it's just her ha ha ha. It's typed there. So Annie's here as well, of course, and we are talking great writing and your experience as writers and coming into the publishing industry. And I love that we have folks who are both veterans and some that are fairly new coming in more recently. And I would love to hear how your experience of kind of getting into the industry was like, and, you know, putting the books that you have written with the subjects that are, and the culture that is near and dear to your heart, and putting that out there into the industry that hasn't always been as open to those subjects, and, you know, perhaps treated them a bit more with kid gloves, as if they were something that could break. You know, it's like, this could be too much. I don't want to give this to you know. So, you know, as women who can speak to that, and as women, I mean, you've got two things going, you know, kind of traditionally against you here, that hopefully the industry is shifting and it is not what it was at one time. But some of you have enough experience here that maybe it wasn't always kind to you. So Sheila, I tell us what you got going on over there. I want to hear from you. And you've got the going into Netflix. You've got a wide range here that you could speak to. I
do, but keep in mind, it took almost 10 years for Dancing on the Edge of the Roof to become Juanita. When I first presented that manuscript, I was basically told, you know, we already have our black book, so, you know, so that was what I was dealing with. It took a while, and you know, the subject matter was, you know, I had to wrestle sometimes with editors who didn't understand what I was talking about and wanted me to change things because it did not fit what they knew. For instance, I had a gentleman in one of my books who was a college graduate and a veteran, and he was a bus driver. And the copy editor, of all people, came back and said, well, I don't understand why he's driving a bus. And I thought, well, because when African-American men came back from World War II, they couldn't necessarily get that vice president's job at the bank. You know, so those are the kind of battles that I had to fight. I don't have to fight as many of them now. I have a fabulous editor at Amistad, Patrick Bass, and things are a little different. But I'm acutely aware of all of the molecules around me that you know are still out there and are still eager to suppress some of the stories that I want to tell and that this pantheon of ladies want to tell. Because, you know, the stories that we have need to be told, and there is an audience for those stories. Absolutely.
A growing audience, I believe, too.
Yes, and it's transcendent.
Yes, yeah. and that is, I was hoping that you saw it the same way I do. I see that there is a quest for understanding that maybe is newer than has ever been there before. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to give us your book suggestions as well, because yes, we are all going to start digging into your books, you know, every single one of you that are here, but it's not necessarily something that, you know, growing up that we necessarily saw on our library, you know, school library bookshelves. So, you know, we have our list of books that we have read throughout our coming up, and they were not those stories that need to be heard and need to be told and need to be read now. And so I'm glad to hear you say that you feel like that audience is transcendent and that it is as wide as it should indeed be. There is so much that we can learn from one another. We just have to be open to reading those things and learning those things, but they also have to be available as well. And so I'm glad to hear that the publishers are are finding more mainstream ways to get all of that out there and not giving you as much resistance and telling the stories that are genuinely yours and letting you tell it. And to that end, I guess, one of my other questions, I want some of you others to share your publishing journeys as well. As we're talking, one of the things to keep in your mind that I hope that you will share with me too is how these stories come to fruition for you. And do you have to think about, if I tell this story, they won't publish it? Or are you writing from your heart and hoping that it lands in the right hands and the right reception? Y'all just jump on in. This is a conversation.
I like when you asked the first question, I got so excited because I've been talking about this for like 2 months. I have a conversation in the March issue of Bitch Magazine, the legacy issue with Disha Filial. Just wrote The Secret Lives of Children.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about writing from the lens of Black women and girls. And, I think we both agreed that authenticity is the key. My books, The Sisters Are All Right, was about Black women, and Dear Black Girls about Black girls. And I would have been, and for that reason, I want our stories to be centered. And I would have been doing us a disservice if I wrote a book and tried to write and explain Black women's experiences and tried to soften the language so that everybody could get it. And I think I wrote books that everyone can gain from. That's what I've heard. But, it was important that the audience that I wrote it for got it most of all. Because, the reality is, in a publishing industry that is still both sexist and racist, changing your work does not guarantee you any success. So, my suggestion to writers is to write an authentic work, and it will find someone. It will find an outlet.
Good advice. Have you guys found that to be true?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would say for me, I started off in the publishing industry. So I was a publicist first. So I worked in publishing before I was actually an author. So I was like behind the curtain, which is really interesting right now, particularly with Yellow Wife, because when I look at what's happening, like with publicity and with marketing, I know my time is running out with my fabulous team because they're going to be moving on to the next book, in the next couple of weeks. And it's almost unfortunate, like it's almost too much information because I've been behind the curtain. When I started my first novel, Love in a Carry-On Bag, I had written this novel. I thought, I'm connected. I've worked in publishing for a few years. I know agents. I know editors. It should be a breeze. I should be able to sell the book. And my agent took my book to the market, and she wasn't able to sell. She wasn't able to sell it. And the reason why was because Borders Books and Music had just crashed at that point. That's when they went to film. And they were responsible for 80 to 90% of books by Black authors. So once that business crashed, publishers didn't know what to do with us. Editors were leaving, whether they were getting fired or being asked to leave or looking for other jobs. Black editors were leaving publishing. There was no place for the new debut Black author. And like Sheila said, I was told by several agents, I already have a Black author. I don't want to be upset, or I don't want to confuse, I don't want to confuse editors by having two of you. And so that was a lot of what I faced, early on in the beginning of publishing.
I can't imagine, as a white author, someone telling me, we already have a white author. I feel like it's such a different experience and not one I can even fathom to understand. And
it's
there's no justification.
It's almost like saying we have too much water in the ocean. I mean, it's like that doesn't happen, right?
Right. I mean, and your stories, and I love the Own Voices movement that's going on now, because I love the fact that publishers are now opening up to allowing, the people of those cultures, whether they are Native American, whether they are Black authors, whether they are Asian authors, to tell their own stories from their own perspective, so that they are giving that authenticity to it. Like you were talking about, Tamara, it's you're telling that story for that group to understand. It's not the watered down version of it that needs lots of explaining. It's your story told your way through your experience. And you know, when we write, we bring our own experiences to the table, to anything that we are writing. And so having your own voices be the ones to tell the stories are going to give that genuine experience. And that is what we desperately need in those stories. So I am glad to see the change. And I'm glad to see that I'm glad to see that more people are open to reading those things, so that perhaps you're not being told we already have our Black author anymore. I'm hoping that is a blanket change across the industry. I really do. So
in my case, it was already Beverly Jenkins, you know, so that's my thought was, you know, I was going to write historical romance and try to tap into the audience that she would publish her one book a year. And I was like, maybe they might want to read something else during the course of the year. Yeah, I know too. Yeah, you know, 3, maybe, you know. So, but you know, a friend of mine, she tried to put forward a Black historical romance in 2006, and that's what the publishing person told her. There's Beverly Jenkins already, so
like that's it. That's all we need.
Yeah, and I'll jump in too.
Like everybody else, I had to self-publish. My thought was, and when I got a certain amount of money when my mother died, I was like, okay, I will use this money to show this particular product in a way so that maybe, and I actually have had other industry professionals say, that never occurred to me before. Like, to get a certain cover, a certain set of covers, that never occurred to me before. So
it's like we have to work to get people to understand that Blackness and Black stories can be representative of universal human stories. Yeah. It's right. You and Beverly Jenkins writing, you're special. We only need one special. You know, it's not the meat and potatoes, and yet the whole canon.
I made sure to choose everything
writing about white men things that we're all supposed to absorb as if I understand that because it's universal, it's human, as opposed to artwork.
And I made sure to choose everything away from what Beverly was doing. Different time period, different experience, different, sensual times, not sexy, hot, sexy times like Beverly had. Sensual times, you know. Some kissing and holding hands, but not, you know, other things. I made sure to do all of that, and still, that's what I heard a lot of. And, you know, I had an agent one time, she was giving out cards at an event, and I went up to her and I started telling her something. And she said, and she had her cards in her hand and she put them in her purse and she walked away from me. So,
oh my God.
I call myself Agent Poison because I was like, nobody wants to do with me at all.
I am so sorry that happened to you. Yeah. But you know what? I hope she looks back now at the canon of work that you've produced and goes, I hope she feels really stupid for that.
I just wanted to jump in on the own voices piece that you mentioned earlier, Nola, because I'm coming, you know, into it at a time when we have all of these events, Twitter pitch events for diverse writers, people of color, that kind of thing. And I actually got my agent through one of those Twitter pitch events. And I was in a predominantly white writing organization and, you know, experienced people being concerned about these pitch events that were specifically for writers of color. And why don't we have them for Christian writers? Why don't we have them for stay-at-home moms and all these other things? And that, you know, that was frustrating. And then I speak a lot to white writers too, who want to write Black characters as well, you know, and I'm always asking them to kind of interrogate what their motives are for why do you want to do it? Is this the story that you need to tell, or are you just doing it to piggyback on what you think is a trend to have stories featuring Black characters? So dealt with both of those things. And then having a white editor now at my publisher, we have a great working relationship. But when we were workshopping, and I call it workshopping, but going through the editorial process with my book, there were things like, you know, where I talked about the kitchen of someone's hair, you know, and there were questions about like, what's that? What's about the kitchen, going on in the kitchen? I had to explain that the kitchen was referring to, you know, the hair at the nape of the neck and those kinds of things. So it was just, she just didn't know. And it was an educational experience to go through that. And then by the end of the editorial process, when we had a copy editor, he questioned certain things that I had in there, and my editor said, oh no, this stays in the book, because this makes sense from the context. So there's just been a growing and learning experience working with my editor.
Now, you brought up the Twitter pitches that are specifically for, certain groups, and especially, Black writers. I may lose my show over this. I'm going to ask you real questions, if that's okay with y'all. I mean, with all respect, is that something that, having these events that are, kind of putting you in a box, is that something that is a good thing to you all, or do you feel like you would rather just be accepted in the group as the whole? How do you feel about those? I mean, this is not something that I can, as a white woman, speak to. And I'm just curious, that one of the things we have learned over the last year is to ask the questions and be open to the answers. And so I'm coming to you with all respect, asking the question, how do you feel about those things being specifically for, your particular group?
I did not feel pigeonholed personally, participating in those events at all. I think until there's this level playing field where we're all getting the opportunities that white writers are getting, then I think it's fine to do what we have to do, to get our voices out there, to get our work out there in front of these editors and agents.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's the least that can be done, and I'm going to take advantage of it until it's level, and we have a long way to go. So until then, I'm going to participate.
It's about casting a wide net to make sure that there's diversity in the publishing field, which there isn't. And because a lot of connections get made between people who know each other. You're in the publishing field, and this person, you hear about this person, you get a connection, which is, a field that historically people of color have been left out of. And so, some of those pitches that are very directed, I think, are an attempt by the field to kind of cast this wide net and bring in people that had been left out. So I don't, and certainly they are still looking for good writers with good stories. So I don't feel like, participating in that, says anything negative about the writing.
We're storytellers. We want to tell our story, and we really don't care who reads it, but we do want someone to read it. And so every opportunity we get to display our work is a good opportunity for us.
I hope you guys know the spirit behind that question. Having this platform can be a dangerous thing, and it can be a good thing. And I feel like that may be a question that a lot of us that are not part of, the group of Black writers that are trying to be seen, we don't know how to look at that. And, coming from the other side of that, I've often wondered, is that something that is welcome to people of color to be put in that group and say, this is your opportunity? Or is it something that almost has the opposite effect, and not seem so welcoming? And obviously it's simply a question and a wonderment on my side, but you being there and being part of it, these are your answers, and how you feel about that is what people need to know.
I think it depends on the author you speak to. You're going to get, I've had this conversation several times, so you're going to get a variety of answers. But, I would always refer to, let's look at the statistics of being published, right? I just know from a romance writer perspective, they release Ripped Bodice. Excuse me. Yeah, I think that's the name.
Bodice Rippers.
Yeah. But, the name of the store. And, they release an annual report, and you see just across the board, as far as just like Black authors, it's like 1%, no more than 5% for some of the big 5 publishers. So if anyone feels uncomfortable, I'm like, let's look at the data. Like this little Own Voices event has not even been a drop in the bucket. So that's when I say that's the least that can be done. I feel passionately about this. And then also, how can we extend it? Because I think someone mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, but they see, Blackness as a trend, right? As a genre, as a trend. So how do we continue to extend this bubble that we have right now? So you'll get different answers from different people. Some people feel like they don't care for these type of events. So
Just
Yeah.
depends, you know.
And we are not a trend. We've been here since 1619. That's a long trend.
Real.
You got lots of stories to tell, don't
Exactly.
you? I love how you said it, Sheila, that we're all storytellers too. And what a story to tell. I love so much of what you guys are. This conversation is just, I'm fascinated by this. You guys are amazing. Piper, what did you want to add?
No, I was going to add, because Sharina, in terms of the Rick Bodice report that's been coming out several years now that focuses on the genre of romance, there are publishers who happily send in their zero.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That they've sent in their zero, and that's who they... I mean, it's just like there was no... I mean, to be fair, there's another publisher who did send in zero, and she was very upset about it all. And, you know, and no, she really was. I really do. But then it comes to this whole aspect of like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
To not have zero. Some publishers openly were not doing a thing and they didn't care, right? But like you, Nola, this particular publisher was really trying to interrogate herself so that didn't have to happen in subsequent years. But I think they came out recently with the other statistic about is 5% since 1950 in publishing. And when you consider the, was it the Pew study that was done about 3 or 4 years ago now that says the most likely reader is a Black woman with about 2 years of college.
Yeah.
You have to ask the question, why? So.
Yeah, the audience is there. That's the thing.
Right.
It's the audience, even if you just focus on one demographic, the audience is there. So it's very laughable. Sadly, laughable.
And to that point, the audience has always been there, right? Like, I feel like we're 6 Black women who say that we've been reading our entire lives. And I know that my mother read, and my grandmother read, and my aunties read. And so, like, we've always been reading, you know, we've always wanted literature by, you know, authors that look like us, that have the experience that we have. And so, you know, the data does not really show what we know to be true, you know?
Yep. It's just a lack of effort. Yep.
Exactly. I am so fascinated by this conversation, and Hollywood has
like I was just going to say, when the Pew people did that study, that was something that happened to come up in the study. They weren't even looking for that. Not surprisingly, right?
That's interesting.
One of the offsets of the study was that they found out who was doing the reading, who has been doing the reading. All of these.
That's interesting. That wasn't even the aim of the study in the first place.
Not the aim of the study at all. Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Holly's got a great question for you guys too, and this kind of comes to, you know, how, you know, I'm thinking about how you get started with the stories that you write. Is it the characters? Is it the time period? Is it a particular struggle that you're inspired to write? And I know, Tamara, you have kind of your focus on what was kind of driving your books, and, you know, those people you were trying to reach with their stories. And, you know, Holly has a good question. You know, I mean, as a white writer, I have written characters of color. Do you feel like you need to stay within those racial confines, or do you find yourself kind of branching out with characters that are of a different race, you know, a white protagonist, for example, or do you stay truly writing characters that relate to Black readers?
I'll take that one. I mean, this first book of mine, I have a white point of view character. So I have this unlikely friendship between a Black woman engineer and an 11-year-old poor white boy in this dying Indiana factory town. And I chose to make the character white because I wanted to talk about the division between Black and white, particularly at the time of Obama's election, during this time of economic despair, you know, where you had struggling white families and Black families, and I wanted to show that. That's why I did it. I certainly didn't feel that I needed to write a white character. And then some people have asked me, you know, what's it like how did you research writing a white boy and a white family? But I'm like, you know, as a Black person in America, I've been in all white environments my entire life. So I'm an expert on whiteness. So I didn't have to study what it means to be white in America. So I was able to tell that story. And it's very different on the other side, someone white writing from the perspective of a Black person. But this also reminds me of what Toni Morrison, the late Toni Morrison, said when questioned by an interviewer with something similar. Not that I'm offended by this question by any means, but she said that, would you ask a white author, when is he going to start writing about Black people? And she said, you're saying that I and my experience is not in the mainstream, and I am in the mainstream. And so she said it much better, but that's basically what she said. And I'm like, yeah, that was powerful.
August Wilson said something similar, just that the whole spectrum of humanity can be found in the Black experience, whether you're talking about romance or, nonfiction, like what sci-fi, whatever. And so, while, Black writers shouldn't feel like they can't write characters and protagonists of other colors, you can still write all that you want to write and write authentically from a Black point of view as well.
I particularly like writing. I like writing about the Black experience. I think our stories are very rich and they need to be told. But with Yellow Wife, it's prehistorical. It's prehistoric. Is a pre-Civil War story about slavery, and about a girl on a plantation. And so when I was writing the mistress of the house, she was very easy for me to identify with. I mean, they live on my block, it's very easy for me to understand, a white woman with control in a house who's telling people what to do and what that looks like and what that feels like. And so, like Nancy said, I've been studying this my whole life. So it was not very difficult for me to slip into her mind, slip into the role to create that character.
The other thing I think is that in America, we live in two worlds. Their world we exist in, and we live in our own. They, generally speaking, do not. And so it doesn't always go both ways. And so we sometimes have more of an opportunity to observe and participate, and it doesn't always work the other way. And that's, that is as it is. It's unfortunate in some cases and difficult but that's, the world sometimes the way we see it, because we are existing in a society that was created around us being in a certain position. So we have a different lens that we look through for our storytelling, for some of the stories we tell, I should say.
Mm-hmm. And so much of what, I like that you talk about the universality of the human experience. And yet you have certain things about your human experience that is going to be unique. And so do you find that it's important for you to choose that universality as kind of a way to reach that broader audience, but give it the lens that you have through your own experience, just to kind of focus that storytelling? So kind of taking something universal and broad, but pulling it into something that is a bit more relatable to what you would perceive as your audience, the women who have read their entire lives that haven't had anything written for them.
I'm not sure we have to try to do that. I mean, just in writing about Black people, our experience, we love, we, have adventures, all of those things. And in the same way, like you wouldn't read Remains of the Day, specific, and say, right. Now, how can you not have this focused on a home in England? And so how are you going to make it so someone else can, you just write what the story is authentic. Right. And in that, you get these longing and regret and love and all of these core themes, even though this particular story is that way it is.
I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Because that's how I feel too. I mean, I feel like we all have, like you said, we all love, we all hurt, we all grieve, we all, find those joys. And the lens that it's presented to should simply add to it, not be something that you feel like has to, work either against it or for it. And it shouldn't have to be two separate things. It should just simply be, this is the story that we're telling. And these are the characters that we have chosen. This is where they live. This is their experience. But the universality of the theme is still the same. So,
yeah. And if anybody has read Cicely Tyson's autobiography that came out prior to her death, she talks about when Sounder came out and people were coming up to her saying how amazed they were at that family. Like, oh, you mean the parents actually love one another and they love their children? Yeah, they do.
It's amazing to hear now. I mean, it's just, I am so glad that I was,
came out.
Yeah. It amazes me to hear these things and to think that that is actually a conversation that someone had with someone else. You know, I don't know. I am being very much enlightened tonight, and this is opening up. These are the conversations I feel like we need to have more of. You know, I feel like there need to be more, and we get a lot on the news. We get a lot kind of pushed at us in the media. I feel like just the conversations need to be had. And, you know, I think that will open hearts, minds, doors on all sides for all people to kind of walk through and appreciate the experiences of others. Because I know that my experience is going to be very different than the experiences that you have, simply because of, you know, what I was born. And it is simply that. And yet, the circumstances that surround where we are and where we've come today, a group of women as authors that are coming together to chat today, and what we have to talk about, I think more of these conversations need to be had. And I truly appreciate you being so candid and so open and allowing me to ask questions that I've wanted to ask, but you just don't know sometimes if it's going to be okay to ask them. And you know, that's kind of a thing too. So many times, you know, I've wanted to ask someone these questions, but I've always been afraid that asking the question would be offensive. You know, the fact that I don't know the answer to that question, like I should know how you would feel about the fact that there are contests for only Black writers, and I don't know that answer. So, you know, I don't want to offend anyone by asking the questions. That's why I prefaced it the way that I did. But, you know, it's one of those things where I said, I'm just going to ask the question, darn it. I mean, it's just, it needs to be asked. And it's something that I feel blessed that you all are being so candid with me, and the answers that we're talking about here, the discussion that we're having, and the fact that there need to be a whole lot more of these, because these stories, your journeys are unique and they are special, and they need to be told too. I mean, you talk about own voices and your own stories. You have your own as well. It's not just the characters in your books. And this has been truly special. And Deborah King is here. I don't know if you guys have met Deborah King. She's an author you need to get to know as well. She's been a guest on the show a couple of times, and I adore her. She is fantastic, and she has written a fabulous book as well. Deborah, always happy to see you here, and you know, thank you so much for adding to our conversation. She's fantastic. Y'all need to get to know her. Deborah, these are some great ladies. You need to look them up. Oh, Annie's piping in too. She's thanking you guys for joining us, and we've got lots of people who are thanking you for such a great discussion. But I want to get to one of my favorite people, and I want to get to this because Tamara's got something she can add to this. So we're going to talk about our New Orleans history and mystery here just a little bit, to talk about another legend. And this woman, y'all, I've always wanted to meet her, and I have not ever had the chance to. We're going to talk about Miss Leah Chase in our New Orleans history and mystery. And she died recently, but she was an icon in New Orleans, not just with her famous gumbo, but also because she helped to feed, literally and figuratively, the civil rights movement in New Orleans. And this woman is incredible. Just a little bit of information on Leah Chase, who's there with, of course, getting her Trinity cooked down, ready to make her gumbo there. She was smart as a whip, deeply religious. She was an art lover who collected art and hung it in the restaurant. And of course, a gifted chef. But more than those things, Leah Chase helped fuel the civil rights movement with her gumbo, fried chicken, and tenacity. She was married to jazz musician Dookie Chase, And Leah worked first in his family's restaurant, which was a little sandwich shop, all the while gently prodding that family to bring the operation a bit more upscale. She had a dream, and her dream was that they would have a fine dining restaurant for the Black people of New Orleans at a time when the standbys of Antoine's and Galatoire's would not serve them. So she and Dookie did just that. They opened up Dookie Chase's, and she lived her dream. And all the while, she used the restaurant she had to not only feed the people, but to help push a movement forward. Here, she fed freedom riders, hosted meetings of the NAACP, and fed some cultural and political giants, such as Martin Luther King Sr., that she called Big Daddy King. He liked his barbecue ribs. James Baldwin loved her gumbo. Sarah Vaughan, she ordered some stuffed crab to go. And of course, Nat King Cole loved him a 4-minute egg. I don't know how you go to Leah Chase's with all of that gumbo and you order a 4-minute egg. Mr. Cole, we need to talk. But not only has she historically changed the world, but her heart, her gumbo, and her soul has continued on in more recent years. Following Hurricane Katrina, George Bush paid her a visit in 2007. Katrina flooded the restaurant, but it did not reach her art on the walls. Her grandson came in and rescued her art off of the walls of Dookie Chase's that she was so in love with, and he saved it for her. And she and Dookie lived in a FEMA trailer next to the restaurant for 18 months, putting that restaurant back together. And it opened again 18 months later, of course, as the fine dining establishment that it had always been. So we were glad to see it resurrected after Katrina. Now, in 2008, Barack Obama visited, and here's where Leah Chase and her true character shines. He sat down to his plate of gumbo and picks up his hot sauce before he'd even had a chance to taste it. Leah Chase swatted his hand, and it's one of her favorite stories to tell. And she swatted the hand of the president because he was going to put hot sauce on her food without tasting it first. She said that he must have liked her a whole lot because Secret Service did not take her away for hitting the president. It was a very Leah Chase thing to do. And of course, Miss Leah Chase, being a fan of art is also a fan of her. This portrait of Leah Chase hangs in the Smithsonian. And to let her legend live on, Leah Chase was indeed the inspiration behind Disney's Princess Tiana, the gumbo cooking, no-nonsense spark plug who worked hard to make her dreams of a fine dining restaurant come true. And of course, her Prince Charming, Dookie Chase, did not play the ukulele like Prince Naveen, but he was indeed a lover of jazz music and a pretty good jazz player to boot. So, Tamara, tell us about your encounter with Leah Chase.
So I was thinking about this today, and it kind of underscores why I think my next book, Dear Black Girl, is important. And that's because of intergenerational discussions and bonding between Black women. So I was in my 20s, and I was working in PR, which has been my day job for most of my life. And Lowry Seasoned Salt was a client, and Leah was the spokesperson for Lowry's. And so, I will never forget, New Orleans is one of my favorite cities, but one of the favorite weeks I ever spent there was with Leah. It was a Thanksgiving weekend. I was able to sit with her in a Piggly Wiggly while she was with people, and she was just sharing all these stories and talking about the food and the seasoning she uses. And, we did so much with her that week. I got to go to Dookie Chase many times. And can you imagine sitting in the kitchen and she's just, calling, bring this out, let them taste this. But I'm telling you, I'm still carrying at least 15 pounds from that. But Miss Leah, she's everything you just said. She was funny, and she was so sweet, and she was so maternal, and the food was good, y'all. So, I didn't know her, but I will never forget the time that I spent with her. Yeah.
And I love that you are able to confirm what we all hope is true about Leah Chase, and is that she is like that all the time. And, you know, Hurricane Katrina was not the only struggle that she went through. She lost her daughter. Her daughter, who was her right hand at Jackie Chase's for a very long time, died giving birth to her daughter's 8th child. And just a testament to Leah Chase's character and, you know, her devotion to what she did and the mission behind everything that she's ever done. The day after her daughter died, she was scheduled to open the restaurant at 11 o'clock, and she did. She says that there was more tears in that gumbo pot than there was gumbo, but that is what her daughter would have wanted her to do, and that's what she did. So her strength, just the strength that she has had over the years. I mean, she lived a long life. She lived, you know, so revered by so many people, and it was truly well-deserved reverence for Leah Chase. She was one of a kind, and the city will mourn Leah Chase for a very, very long time because of that.
Miss Ada, just real quick, Miss Ada and Sweet Tea is based on her and Edna Lewis together.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm so excited about Sweet Tea. I'm really excited about Sweet Tea. I'm a huge fan of Leah Chase, so I'm dying now to read. I was in suspense enough with just not having the cover, so now I'm really excited. Yay! So good to know. Okay, y'all. Sweet Tea, Leah Chase's story, based on Leah Chase. All right, so here I have, so you can answer one of these. This is our lanyap. Lanyap in Louisiana is a word that means a little something extra, like the 13th donut in a baker's dozen. So we're going to ask kind of our little, you know, gut answer question here. What figure from Black history are you most inspired by? Or what figure from Black history do you wish more people knew about? So you can answer both. You can answer one of them, none of them. What you got? Someone, let me put it back up. Someone you're inspired by, most inspired by, or someone you wish more people knew about. There's too many choices on that first one, I'm afraid.
Well, Gordon Hurston, I guess I would say, because I wrote my dissertation about her, so I guess she would be the one I was most inspired by. So I could say that.
I would say Phyllis Wheatley.
Mm-hmm.
Harriet Tubman for me.
I'm going to go ahead and say Mary Lumpkin for me. That is who I base it off of. So my character Phoebe is based off of Mary Lumpkin, who was a slave woman in Richmond who endured some of the worst treatments that you can possibly endure as a woman, and had to make some really tough choices. And Mary Lumpkin's actually the jail that she lived in, she was able to rent it out to a Baptist minister who was teaching the free Blacks to read. And that space went on to be one of the first historical Black colleges, Virginia Union University. And so Mary Lumpkin was a person who a lot of people had not heard of. And so I hope with Yellow Wife, her story will start to move around a bit.
Good answer.
I would say probably people no one has heard of because they're my family. I started genealogy several years ago and uncovered like wonderful stories about the women in my family, and it makes me so happy and proud because they're my Black history and part of me, like my great grandmother who, while raising 10 kids on a farm in Alabama, was writing this amazing poetry, and I got a sense of it, and just thinking about how she found time to do that, and somehow sometimes I can't find it. Then I go down to guilt spiral. But very inspired by them. And then a person I wish people knew more about. I wish people knew more about Coretta Scott King's feminist work and her work on behalf of the ERA and those things. She was not just Martin Luther King's wife.
I got a chance to hear Coretta Scott King speak, and there was such a power in the room with her. I mean, she was incredible to hear speak, and absolutely more people need to delve a bit more into the work that she did and things that she had to say. She's something else. That had to have been one of the just most amazing experiences I have ever had, sitting in a room full of people, because you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone hung on every word she said. And she was such a gracious speaker as well. Sheila?
I would agree that I've got some women in my family that I would love to know more about. I am a genealogy geek. I will just admit it. There's one individual who I saw on a tax record only listed as N. Beck. And I want to know a little more about her because she was probably born in the 1740s and she probably wasn't born in North America. So she's one heroine. Mary Fields is another. They call her Stagecoach Mary. She was a woman who tackled the Wild West and did it with style and a lot of strength. And I think she's a character that would be really interesting to know a lot more about.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of what Tamara said in terms of Rosa Parks. I wish more people would not cling so strongly to the mythology of Rosa Parks and the tired old lady and everything, but to know her complete story of how she had always been a warrior for social justice from the time she was a very young girl for most of her life. So I like to hold her up in terms of that.
Good answers. Now, I know, Nancy, you brought up Black universities, and Annie was telling me a story, Piper, about a tree planted at Hampton University and that it has some significance. What is the significance? Because I have to know, because we were just kind of chatting and talking, and Annie's like, you got to ask her about the tree. It's like, so I'm asking you about it. I want to know now. I was like, what is the significance of this tree?
The Emancipation Tree at Hampton was where Mary Peak, who was one of the real life women who inspired my heroine, Amanda, in my Home to Milford College series, was someone who taught and taught actually during the course of the war, not after the war, but she was teaching Black people to read and write during the course of the war underneath that tree. And it's called the Emancipation Tree because there was a gathering of people at the tree when the Emancipation Proclamation was read. And if you go now, they had to build Highway 64 through that, and then they had to build another highway in order to get on the campus and stuff, and it's all blocked off, and you can see the tree itself is like choking. It really is. It's really a sad sight to see. I wish that they had respected it more as a tree, per se, because it's very important historically to think about what went on there in terms of Black liberation and freedom. So yeah, it's
interesting story. Sad that they've done that to that tree, but interesting story about it. Interesting story. Well, we have kept you guys for so long, but I appreciate all of your time. We're going to start wrapping things up and bringing it a little bit to a close because it's my show and Annie gets mad if I don't promote my own books once in a while. Thank you, Annie. Both of my books, Crescent City Moon and Crescent City Sin, are available on Amazon or wherever books are sold online. You go ahead and check out the reviews on Amazon, but my preference always is that you will purchase it from an independent bookstore. Support them, please. But of course, leave your reviews with the big guys because that helps lots of folks find new things to read. And speaking of finding new things to read, these ladies have not only given you some great suggestions at the top of the show, but their books need to be making it onto your to-be-read pile. I know they are definitely on mine. So check out their books. They've all got lots to choose from. This is simply a little bit of a sampling there. We want to, of course, wish Sadeqa and Nancy congratulations on their launches of those beautiful books. And if you guys are wanting to check out past episodes of the show, if you did not get to catch the show all the way from the very beginning, you don't want to miss a minute of it. So go on over to YouTube on Nola Nash Entertainment, and you can check out this show as well as others. All of the episodes of the Second Line Show, including our special editions, hang out there on YouTube. So ladies, thank you so much for your candidness, for your inspiration, your beautiful books, and a gripping conversation tonight. It has truly been an honor and a joy to spend the last hour with all of you. I am grateful. I'm humbled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.